I just want Misun, if she wants to say anything, and then I'm going to open it up to the whole floor to everybody.
Yeah, and I think Lucy and Ellen and Michele, they had a group as well. So I'll just share something really quickly,
Yes.
and then I'll, Michele, were you the group spokesperson? No, okay. It seems to me as I'm listening to everyone, there seems to be like maybe two themes emerging. So one has to do with technology. How do we support students with technology? How do we not overwhelm them? How do we sort of make things more coherent for our students' experiences? And maybe the other theme that I'm sort of sensing is maybe something more philosophical, like beingness. How do we be online? How do we as faculty members function online? How do students function online? Those boundaries that are elusive, how do we establish them? What kind of guidance can we get from the college about beingness? Like, what are the boundaries? What are the expectations students also have? What are the expectations faculty should have of students? How should students? So to me, that's kind of like what I'm hearing, the kind of two themes. And yeah, let me just, I know, I don't want to talk too much because I know there's one more group. So I just want to shift it to the next group. Like, do you see
Yeah.
those two themes, or did your group talk about something a little bit
Yes,
different?
thank you, Misun. I really want to I'm going to ask this question to Michele, if she doesn't mind. Michele Mills, that is, because she spoke about faculty and the stress and the support or the lack of support that faculty gets, right? Michele, you want to talk on that a little bit? Or,
Well, I had to come a little late to my group because I was giving an exam, so I don't want to
yes.
negate what was discussed before I came
Oh, okay,
to my
so
group. But what I will say is that I think even in lieu of also thinking about what Wendy mentioned,
yes,
what's been mentioned, there needs to be an ability for us to support one another, for us to be able to reach out for those outlets. I have very much appreciated the support that I've gotten from faculty persons that's been extremely collegial to sort of hold me up. And I've tried to do that to others. But what I also feel is that it needs to not require sometimes a deliverable, because the deliverable is all of us. You know, I appreciate going to CTLs and learning, but I've always felt it doesn't mean that I need to show a poster or I need to show the change is going to happen if I change and I receive the support, the students are going to get that. And so there are times that I feel that there needs to be a little bit of a transition in terms of what's considered the deliverable. Because a deliverable to me is a whole faculty person or a whole staff person who feels held up in order to provide the type of service that we offer. And I think the thing that's the beauty of that, LaGuardia, in my time that's been here in the 6 years, and I think we discussed that, is the fact that we give so much. I mean, we are all here giving more. I mean, I've taught at Long Island University full-time, and I taught at SUNY Downstate full-time as a full-time faculty person. I've never given as much of myself. I've never worked as hard as a faculty as here. However, there are definite rewards because we see our students change their lives, but it requires a lot from us.
yes.
And so, you know, I've been on the soapbox about our students getting ELA support throughout the continuum of their time, even when they get to the candidacy programs, even in preparation for them to be to transfer, because that's, you know, we're attracting students who are coming from all over the globe. In Queens, the borough with the, you know, the largest diversity, having that ability to know that when the students come here, that support doesn't leave them. You know, some of our students take, you know, one course a semester. they finally get into a candidacy program or they get into a program, and once they're in, then what happens? They're slammed with all the requirements of the program, and the support they need isn't there, you know? So I think getting that support then also helps the faculty. It helps us to be able to provide what we know we'd like to offer that's not still filling the gaps that our students require. For every department here, you know, being on the curriculum committee at LaGuardia has also helped me to know how much work each department puts into their courses to help our students. And a lot of it has to do with recognizing we're trying to fill those gaps that have to do with other aspects. So to me, that's a way of helping me feeling supported as a faculty member. And then, of course, still having that ability to receive support and find ways for faculty support one another, opportunities for that.
Michele,
Thank you,
you
Michele.
just told you know, you've raised such a big topic here. And, you know, as a person from the CTL, of course, I have questions about that. And as a person involved with scholarship, I have questions about that. How we ask our students to perform. How do we show that we've internalized? So I don't want anybody to answer that question, but you've really asked a very good one. And so I think that's a thing. And in the interest of time, I know Lucy, Thomas, and
Yes, we
Ellen,
need to
but
hear.
I also know that President Adams has been a very good listener.
I
And
know.
we'll have questions for us. So I just want to make space for
Yes,
those
yes.
questions. So if we could do that. And Leigh, you also haven't heard, I've seen the chat. The chat's very busy, but you know, voices, especially now online. Ian, we haven't heard. So, you know, take a minute or so, folks, and please offer your voice. And President Adams, I know you probably want to intervene. So jump in when folks are talking.
Actually, I have a question to put in. Yeah, it's focused based on what Michele was saying, but also on the technology side is what could we do to like support student digital literacy that is just not there? So I'm in the library. We've seen when we get questions, we've actually seen more responses to our emails this semester than last, which was a pleasant surprise, and seen different types of activity on our reference chat. But what I've noticed more was, and what Ryan was talking about from our group too, was just students just not knowing how to use a computer. And it's great that like we could have these online resources for them to access, but if they can't even, if they don't even know how to right click something to use digital tools, like how do we get them to that step? Before remote learning and all this, we would have some people come in still and maybe the same amount of people, but they had someone to go to in person to talk to, and then you could just literally walk them through whatever the process is of like how to download an article, how to email it to yourself. And even in our department, we had that same type of thing, and we helped resolve that. So like as librarians, we do these one-offs. We'll join the different FYS classes, and we're also like, I've done like Zoom classes, Blackboard Collaborate classes, Google Classroom, Google Hangout as a teaching space. And we had to do our own training in the library to like accommodate to educate ourselves on how to use these different platforms and teach on them, because I'm not using this regularly. Like, and we were able to do that because we had some people that knew how to use the platform. So it's just also recognize that, yeah, those students, they're not only just learning how to use a computer, they're also having to deal with language skills, both like learning academic English, maybe just English as a second language, and then also now 3 different platforms that 3 different professors are learning.
Yeah.
And like even our reference chats, we had like students also turning from here to use a database to now this is a therapy session because they're struggling.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Thomas suggested that when he was speaking in our group, but I noticed that in the chat that I saw something about a class that was taken away. They taught a class in computers. My chat disappeared. Sorry.
Yeah, that was actually me.
Mine disappeared.
I remember when I was a
Okay,
student.
there it is, Thomas.
I remember when I was a student at LaGuardia, I remember like when a long time ago, they used to have like a computer basics class, which kind of taught all of that computer literacy about like right clicking, saving files, you know, just computer folder structures and all this stuff. And it's something that like myself with working with students, I see that they have a lot of trouble with today. And I always kind of just never really understood why the class was taken away. And I feel like there was like this false thing where everyone was thinking that like this younger generations of students that are coming to college, they're all going to be tech savvy, and they're really not. There's a lot of them that aren't. And we still also have a lot of older students too that are here that are not tech savvy. So I just felt like that CIS 100 course, the computer basics course, was something that's very key, I think, for a lot of students. And we just don't have that anymore. And especially during a time now of distance learning where we're so heavy on technology, we don't have like a computer basics course anymore.
Oh, that's interesting, Thomas. Yeah.
I do want to just add that there are the student technology mentors. And I know that in English classes, especially ENA 101, which is really, really important in terms of bringing students up to a level where they can engage, like Michelle's talking about, that we call on these student technology mentors. I'm sure a lot of us did that this year. I know I did. In each semester, I had someone come in and just review how everybody's computer savvy, you know, just review what they wanted to learn, what they wanted to build on. And what was really interesting is that at that moment, some of the students suddenly came out with all of this skill that they had that I didn't even know, that they had not connected with their college work. It was like two different trains or something. So I think specific targeted resources like that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that I think Estefany can probably speak to that too, since you work with the mentors, Estefany, right, or with the peer mentors. But let's see if President Adams would like to.
Michelle, I think Ian wants to speak.
Where is Ian?
Yes.
So speak, Ian.
Yes.
Let us have it.
Yes. So, yes, if anyone doesn't know me, Ian Albert's from, I think, the Natural Sciences Department. And so just very interested in these aspects about technology, but just to maybe incorporate a little bit of contrast, then in one of the classes I teach is one of the pathways classes. So it's a non-science, so it's chemistry class for non-science majors. And one of the aspects, one of the assignments we do in the class is a scaffolded research project, which effectively runs over pretty much most of the semester. And so the idea really is that they choose a topic that's of interest to them or something related to a scientific concept that we've discussed, and they take it off to a much deeper level. So it could be something related to the environment or nutrition or viruses or substance abuse or anything really, but of course trying to relate it on a scientific level. And of course, we've been doing this for a few years, and of course there's good student output. There's a whole range. There's intermediate, there's some poor output. But interestingly, I've found that in general, particularly the last couple of semesters, the quality of particularly the final report, and we asked them to do a presentation as well, the quality of these student outputs has actually, I believe, significantly increased during this period. And I think, I think there's a number of reasons for it, but one possibly is related to the use of technology and finding information online. And I think, they're non-science majors, so I'm not sure if they're computer science majors, most of them are not. But the quality, particularly their presentations, the quality has improved enormously, actually, the last couple of semesters. And we just did it the end of May, and there was some really brilliant ones this time. And it's clearly from, it wasn't material we discussed in class, so it's ideas and aspects that they've searched for and gathered from other resources. So particularly the use of technology. So that's just a little bit of a contrast there.
Yeah.
it'd be very interesting. I mean, in fact, just remind me that you know, we did do a couple of weeks ago, just related to the idea of some faculty resources, because one of the topics was about conflict, and the student in the presentation raised a specific global conflict that was happening 2 weeks ago. There's a bit of a ceasefire at the moment, and you know, it sort of put me on the spot. It's the first time I've experienced this, and I didn't really know how to respond. So I actually didn't. So I just thanked the person for the presentation, asked a couple of questions about some other aspects. But it really made me think, you know, I really didn't know how to respond to the particular comments that were made, which, you know, were on a particular side of that conflict. Yeah, just raise that as an interesting issue.
Thanks, Ian. How about Estefany? You've been quiet, and Ellen hasn't said much, I don't think. Perhaps she chimed in on someone else's remarks, and also Leigh.
I just want to say very briefly, I don't want to take time here, but going back to the peer mentorship programs under the Center for Teaching and Learning, we do have the student technology mentors, the student success mentors, and the peer advisors. And these 3 peer mentorship programs do work with one another and collaborate with one another to enhance the student experience. So I think, you know, it's what are the ways in which we could be sure that students know that there are these resources and there's this support system, human support system, right?
Yeah.
For peer-to-peer. And I think that's very important, especially during the distance learning transition. These peer mentors played very important roles in many ways. So I just want to say that.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you.
And so I would add, in my group, Lucy and I in particular, before Michele arrived, we spent a bit of time talking about what students were actually able to accomplish in spite of the challenges that they had. So kind of touched on resilience and some really remarkable kind of achievements. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that Lucy raised was this idea that we've seen probably now more than ever, you know, that academics, we need to be thinking about new pathways for students who are not necessarily, you know, prepared or ready to complete college. And so that was another thing. But the thing that really is interesting to me that no one is talking about, if I may, and it's something that's on my mind, is how are we going to address the deficits, right? So Santo talked about earlier, you know, that a lot of this was built on a prior online initiative that was obviously developed for people who were choosing to attend college remotely. We know that certainly in March 2020, that was not the case, and probably thereafter in the fall. But, you know, so many of our students, and I know this from experience in talking to other faculty, they don't know how to be in-person college students right now, because they think it means to go to college, they're also driving, they're taking care of their children, they're cooking, you know, in less worthy situations, you know, they're watching Netflix. So there's that kind of challenge and deficit that's developed, like a new distractibility, right? We know that our students have always been distracted, but I feel like this has raised it to a new level. And then there's been some real interruptions for our students that are the more traditional students that have attended high school, completed high school remotely. And so we're going to be welcoming students in the fall, hopefully more and more in person, that have just finished over a year. You know, maybe they've taken a gap, maybe they haven't. So anyway, I'll stop. But that's I think we've learned a lot. But my question is, where do we go?
And I guess I can chime in now. I can maybe say something about that, Ellen. That's a really good question. And so I think what's important is that we have lots of different options for students. Thomas, you're talking about this also, I think, but we have different options for students. So those students who do feel like, you know, the online environment has really served their needs, and that, you know, they have kids and they have to cook or whatever, and they can maybe multitask with school, and they have the ability to do that. Because I had a lot of students say, you know, they were actually able to continue more and maybe take a couple more classes because of the online learning. I know that's, you know, not the majority, but there are some students who are in that situation. So I think, you know, moving forward, we should have a variety of options for students to choose from. At the same time, I know it's definitely going to be hard to be back. And especially, you know, for me, it's going to be hard to be back. Like, wait, I totally changed everything about my classes to online, and I did online asynchronous. And now, you know, that was a lot of work and prep. And now, oh yeah, how did it work when I was actually, you know, talking to students and we were having discussions live? So I don't have an answer, but it's going to be challenging. But I think something that I've learned is I used to think I would never ever teach a fully online class, especially asynchronous. But I actually really enjoyed it and found that students were very engaged and seemed to learn a lot, even though it was such a different mode. And like I said, there were some students who absolutely loved it and said, hey, I could actually do more and finish my degree because of this asynchronous course. When I can do my work on my own time.
That's interesting. But Leigh, if I can just add to that, I was really struck in your writing that at the same time, that you said you saw both sides of it. Did I understand that you missed you realized you didn't see your students, and so you didn't know them, right? So I was interested in how you presented both sides of.
That's actually goes back to the boundary situation that we were talking about earlier. So I found kind of opposite from Thule's experience. When I was on campus, you know, sometimes it was hard to have my boundaries of like, okay, we're just here to talk about school and that's it. No, I had students come with all sorts of things they wanted to talk to me about during office hours or after, you know, in the hall after class. And so I had that happen a lot in person. So I really got to know my students. They really opened up to me. I would see them in the hall, you know, I'd know them as people. And now with online, it's much different. I mean, the spring when the pandemic hit is an exception, because then, you know, hearing all about everything everyone was going through, definitely connected a lot with that. But I'm more focusing on fall and spring when we weren't in horrible crisis mode. Students kind of just did their work, and you know, some of them came to office hours. I tried to connect with some of them, but I didn't get to know them like I get to know students and face to face. And that's something I really like, is to have relationships with students. So which I didn't really do in asynchronous, but I think I still effectively taught them about linguistics in asynchronous, even if I didn't have that connection with all of them.
Lucy, can you share what you just typed in the chat, some of the larger themes you're noticing?
Sure. Well, I like what you were saying before about kind of something called beingness, and which I guess I would also call modes of presence, like Leigh just talking now about her experience teaching asynchronously, others teaching synchronously. So what exactly is our relationship with the student? What are they expecting? And then a lot of people needing faculty support and also getting it in different ways. I think the whole effort on diversity, inclusion, and equity has been an incredible, incredible achievement during this year of crisis that I think we really need to recognize. And then also flexibility. How can we increase flexibility? How can we learn from the flexibility that we found and that the students have found? I think that's what Ellen and I were talking about, this courage and this surprise that students were able to do this. And then for the students who were not, how can we rethink the F? How can we rethink how to call people in? And I think we've gotten a lot of wisdom, but I think we really need to amp up the flexibility.